the government have agreed to let in 2 UN representatives. So far, it would seem that the Sri Lankans are playing hardball with the Tigers. It wants a surrender, the Tigers perhaps looking for a face-saving way out. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera.
Let's try and get some clarity on this situation there now. David Chater joins us live from Colombo. David, what are you hearing?
Sammy, I think it's very important that the top UN humanitarian official has managed to gain a concession from the Sri Lankan government to allow 2 of his security officials to get in to the combat zone, the Tamil Tigers' last stronghold, because what has marked out this conflict over the last few days certainly is claimed by the Sri Lankan government and then counter-claimed by the Tamil Tigers. There have been no independent eyes, if you like, inside that combat zone. And so for the first time we will get an independent assessment of what's going on inside the Tamil Tigers' last stronghold. And that will allow us to at least gauge from an independent source the sheer scale of the suffering. I spoke today to the minister who's involved in the talks with John Holmes, the UN's top humanitarian official. I asked him about the decision to allow the UN to cross the front line, but first of all, I asked him about the Tamil Tigers' unilateral declaration of a ceasefire.
Well, the Secretary of Defense has already commented on it on behalf of the government, and if I may to quote him, he has called it a joke and asked the LTTE to immediately surrender. So this is the official position of the government, the consolidated government of Sri Lanka position. The LTTE must surrender now. Everyone knows that they are cornered. The whole world has asked them to surrender, lay down their weapons, and then release the civilians whom they are forcibly keeping with them.
John Holmes came here and had the meeting with you and has asked for a pause. What's your response to that pause?
Well, the pause that he asked for really was in the context of allowing 2 UN security personnel to go into the no-fire zone. In principle, we have said that we will facilitate such a visit, but of course the logistics of the visit will have to be discussed. We can't risk their lives by sending them to an area where there's fighting. So it is in that context, I think, Sir John was talking about a pause so that they can go in there and observe what is happening and then come back. So we are now in the process of discussing the logistical arrangements of these 2 going in. Sir John also recognizes that there has to be an agreement on the LTT side as well to allow these 2 officials to go in.
It's been said that those people trapped inside still the zone are facing starvation. But isn't it the case that the Air Force, Sri Lankan Air Force, is flying in humanitarian aid into that zone?
Well, not only that, but also we have now got the ICRC to agree to start taking in food from tomorrow in the Green Ocean. So there'll be 30 metric tons of food. We are trying to see whether we can send some medical supplies, which is urgently needed, and we will continue with that commitment.
David, let's try and clarify what sort of fighting is going on there. We've heard, of course, the Tigers saying they're declaring unilateral ceasefire. Yesterday, members of the Sri Lankan Air Force told me they're not fighting. Today, the government says it's going to allow aid agencies or aid workers to get into the combat zone. What does that mean in terms of Army ground operations?
Well, they didn't actually say that aid agencies will be allowed in there. They just said that 2 UN security officials will be allowed to cross the front line. Now, I talked to the minister about that and how much of a pause that would mean. I said, does it mean that the Sri Lankan government forces would stop their operations for half an hour, whatever? He said, well, he simply didn't know. It depends on the circumstances on the ground. But certainly they've improved since the unilateral declaration of a ceasefire by the Tamil Tigers. But I must reiterate, time and time again, the Sri Lankan government has insisted that they are not conducting any bombardments in the combat zone. And neither the Air Force, nor the Army, nor the Navy, they say, have been conducting any bombardments anywhere near the combat zone. So they dismissed the Tamil Tiger claims, especially the spokesman that we heard from in London today, that there were bombing runs going on and that the government was committing any slow genocide. It's very important. What the minister was telling me there was that the large ferry which the ICRC have been using, the Green Ocean, to go to and fro between Trincomalee and the combat zone, will again leave tomorrow with 30 tons of supplies plus medicine. Now, the naval commander was telling me there that every time that ferry goes anywhere near the combat zone, it's being mortared, every single time mortared by the Tamil Tigers. So perhaps for the first time this ferry and the ICRC will be able to land their supplies in peace and quiet.
David, I know the Tamil Tigers have said they're not interested in surrendering, but any sign of any negotiation perhaps on terms of surrender?
No signs whatsoever. They've been pretty adamant and they're still playing a very clever game in the propaganda war. They've timed this declaration of a unilateral ceasefire to coincide with the visit of the UN, and they're going to fully exploit that to try and bring in the international community to pressure the Sri Lankan government forces to stop their advance, to stop the whole operation and declare a ceasefire on both sides. But it's very clear from my talking to the government ministers involved in this and the senior military men that this will not happen. It's the last throw, if you like, of the Tamil Tigers in the propaganda war because they are losing the conventional military one.
All right, we'll leave it there for now, David.